Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. So this book was copyright 1967, and it's part of a series that I'm doing called The Masterpieces of Science Fiction, and this is episode 26 of that series. And there's 140 books that I will be reading and reviewing. Now you might be asking yourself, just like I was, why is this book in a series called The Masterpieces of Science Fiction? Right on the cover here it says, a masterpiece of modern day horror. I think most people know this is more in the horror genre. And I thought maybe there was something I didn't know about. And after finishing the book, I'm still not sure why Easton Press included it in this series. But regardless, I'm happy they did because it got me to read the book and I totally loved it. And I think there's probably two camps of people here. There's probably a vast majority of people that'll watch this video that have either seen the movie or read the book or both. Or there's people like me who really didn't know much about this book. And I really want to encourage, if you don't know anything about this book, I'm not going to spoil anything. You can watch this whole video. But you're in for a treat. If you like horror and you want to give this one a shot, you are really in for a treat because it's fantastic. And it's one of those books you just don't know where it's going. It has some good kind of twists and turns, a very interesting ending. But anyways, let's just get into the book. So I'm going to very briefly just kind of go over the plot. This book takes place around the time Ira Levin wrote the story, so late 60s, maybe early 70s. And we're in New York City, and it's all told by the point of view of Rosemary. And she's in her mid-20s, and her husband, Guy, is in his early 30s. And he's kind of a struggling actor. He's trying to get some big parts, and he's been kind of just doing commercials and smaller roles, support roles. And they've been trying to find a place in a specific part of New York. And in the beginning of the book, they get a chance to go check out a apartment that came open in an area they were really trying to get into. And from here, we just kind of continue this story. We meet some of the neighbors. We follow along as Guy is going through his kind of acting career. And it's really no surprise because of the title of this book, but they want to have a kid, and eventually Rosemary gets pregnant. And I want to leave it really at that for the plot overview. Like I said, most people know what happens in this book. If you don't, I'm going to be very careful not to spoil anything. But I can talk about some things about what makes this book so great. So it's all told from the point of view of Rosemary, like I said. And this was in the 60s when Ira wrote this book. And I think it was really ahead of its time about how he wrote the female lead character in here. She is not this dumb character that's going to go out to the woodshed at night because she hears a noise. She's very smart. She's thinking about all these different issues as the story goes through. She's trying to protect herself, but she's kind of rendered helpless at times because of the way doctors treat her, her friends, her family, her husband. They're kind of trying to make decisions about her and her baby. And so you get that whole aspect of the book, which is just fascinating. It's done really well, I think, especially for its time. And then you have this whole horror element that is involved with this book. And it goes places that I wasn't quite sure it was going to go. You question a lot of things in this book and it kind of helps keep you on your toes. At times, you're not even sure Rosemary knows what's going on because of one reason or another. So you almost have times where you're thinking you have an unreliable narrator in this story, and you're not sure what's happening. And as you get towards the end of this book, it all kind of comes to a head fairly quickly. You're reading towards the end thinking, how is he going to wrap this book up? And he does it in a very interesting way. I didn't like the ending at all right when I finished it, but the more I thought about this book, I've been thinking about it for a couple days now, the more I think it's just the perfect ending. And I'm not going to tell you whether it's a happy ending, a sad ending, an indifferent ending. People that read the book or seen the movie, I think you could interpret it probably different ways, which is another great thing. So I'm just going to leave it at that. For the pros and cons, this book was written extremely well. Ira Levin, this is the first book I've read of his, and I can't wait to read some more. I have a viewer on this channel named Robert who has told me to check out a science fiction book that Ira Levin wrote called This Perfect Day. And I've kind of always been on the lookout for it, and it's a hard one to find. I'm trying to find a paperback to put on my paperback shelves. Haven't been able to find a good copy yet, but at some point I'm going to find it and I'm going to read it. And I'm super excited to get into more of his works. So his writing is great. The plot is great. The themes of, women's liberation and sexism towards women and everything, it was handled, I think, really good, ahead of its time. For cons, I can't really think of many cons in this book. Like I said, when I finished it, I would have said the ending was a con, but after thinking on it, I don't feel that way anymore. And so, and also I've read quite a bit of horror, and I've been slowly going back through and trying to read some of the classics of horror. As you can tell, I love the classics of science fiction. I kind of got into reading through Stephen King, and I read some other modern horrors since then. But the more I go back and read some of this classic horror, the more I really like it. So I've read some of the big ones. I've read Dracula. I've read a lot of the Ray Bradbury horror light books, I would call those. I read Richard Matheson, I Am Legend. I want to read Hell House. I want to read Frankenstein. I still haven't read that. And I'm probably forgetting a couple others. But if anyone knows of some good classic horrors that I can mix in here and there, I'm all for it, because this one just kind of blew me away. So who should read this? I think if you like horror, you should read it. There's nothing too horrific. I mean, there's some scenes and some things that happen that you probably don't want to have a completely weak stomach for. If you're familiar with the movie, or if someone told you about the movie and it didn't sound horrible, then give this one a shot. And other than that, yeah, it was just great. I was very pleasantly surprised with this one. So that's all I got for that. The next book I'm reading is The Iron Dream by Norman Spinrad. And I'm a little ways in already. Look for a review for that one in the future. And thanks for watching.